Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. My name is Muhammad Mujibur Rahman bin Faisal. My metric number is 119 to 120. And for my presentation, I will present the misconduct of LGBT in the Malaysian law and Islamic law, and how law played roles as the mechanism of obliteration and control. Okay, first of all, let us see what is LGBT. LGBT stands for L, lesbian, G, gay, B, bisexual, and 3, transgender. So, L is lesbian, a woman with a same-sex interest. For example, a woman likes a woman. And then gay. Gay is a man with a same-sex interest. For example, I'm a man likes a man. And then bisexual. Bisexual man is a man or woman who have an interest in both sexes. For example, I'm a man, I likes a man, and also I likes a woman. And then transgender. Transgender is a man or woman who changed his or her gender to the opposite sex. For example, I'm a man, I changed my gender to the opposite sex. Okay, let us proceed to what is LGBT in the perspective of Islam. So in Islam, LGBT is one of the great sins. We know from the hadith from Ibn Abbas radhiyallahu anhu, لعن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم المتشابهين من الرجال بالنساء والمتشابهات من النساء بالرجال. Mean the Prophet cursed لعنت effeminate men and those women who assume the similitude manners of men, which means the transgender people are cursed by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whether the man resembles a woman or the woman resembles the man. Another hadith عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من وجدتموه يعمل عمل قوم لوط فاقتلوا الفاعل والمفعول, which means for Ibn Abbas رضي الله عنه Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, whoever of you finds the perpetrator committing the deeds of the people of Lut, the Kaum Lut, then kill both of them, the perpetrators. The fa'il wal maf'ul. The orders to kill here means the stoning for the married perpetrator, the muhsan perpetrator, and 100 whipping for the non-married perpetrator. So from here we know that LGBT is absolutely and clearly illegal in Islam and must be prevented. Hence, after the overview of LGBT, the objectives of this presentation is to relate the LGBT to Malaysian law and Islamic law, and how Islamic law deals with LGBT in Malaysia. In this presentation, I will talk about 3 misconduct of LGBT in Malaysian legal provision. So, the first one is free sexual misconduct and carnal intercourse against the order of nature, the luar tabi'i, characterized and dressed in the opposite genders, and the last one, genders changing. So, I will explain about it in the next slide. Firstly, the free sexual misconduct and carnal intercourse against the order of nature, or luar tabi'i. First, civil law also deal with this offences. As said in penal code, there are 5 sections talk about these offences, and we can see here unnatural sex through oral or anal, a voluntary unnatural sex, a natural sex without consent, sexual intercourse with an object either through anus or genitals, violating decency by committing extreme obeisance, and we can see civil law also deal with this problem. And from we move to the Islamic law, the more important one. We can see section 25 and 26. Section 25 talks about liwat, gay, and section 26 talks about lesbian, sohakah. Of Sharia, these sections from Sharia Criminal Offences, Federal Terrorist Act 1997. So the fine here, the sentence here is the fine of not more than 5,000 ringgit, and the whipping not more than 6 strokes. And section 30 also had the same. Section 30 of Sharia Criminal Offences Ta'zir Terengganu, Nekman 2001, also talks about the musahaka and the same fine as the Sharia Criminal Offences Federal Terrorist. And still, people are always criticize and complaining about these rules, as they said it is contrary to the Article 8 of the Federal Constitution. But as we can see, in Islam there are 4 main purposes of sentence. First, the retribution, the recovery, the deterrence, and prevention. So people will never do it again, and it will be a lesson to the the one who did the offense. Now the second issue is characterize and dress in the opposite genders. For example, a man wearing a woman attire or a woman wearing a man attire. So it is an issue of LGBT. So in civil law also governs this or deals with this problem in the section 14 of Minor Offences Act 1955. It says about the people offenses of wearing indecent dress. So wearing indecent dress, we can kiaskan it to the LGBT or the opposite gender dress. So the offenders under this provision may be fined not exceeding 100 ringgit. So in Islamic law, there's also a law governs regarding this issue. In section 28, 30 and 66 of Sharia criminal offences in federal territories, Selangor and Negeri Sembilan, it says that any male person who in any public place wears a woman's attire and poses as a woman or immoral purposes shall be guilty of an offence and shall on convicting be liable to a fine not exceeding 1,000 ringgit or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 1 year or to both. So there's a law governs or in Islamic law governs this issue. So it is important us to know about it. So before we talk about a man wearing a woman attire, so what about a woman wearing a man attire, the opposite? So from section 34 of Sharia criminal offences enactment 2013, it says that any woman who in any public place wear a man's attire and poses as man for immoral purposes commits an offence and shall on conviction be liable to a fine not exceeding 1,000 ringgit or to imprisonment or for a term not exceeding 1 year or to both. So which means woman also is not applicable to, is not in other words, it's not allowed in Islam to wear a man's attire. So however, all these section before and now is only applicable to Muslims but not to non-Muslims. Okay, now let's moving to the offense of changing gender, which has been the most important and a hot issue in Malaysia nowadays. So the fourth Muzakara, back to 1982, the fourth Muzakara Jawatan Kuasa Fatwa Majlis Kebangsaan for Hal-Ehwal Agama Islam Malaysia convened and on 13 until 14 April 1982, it has been decided that the act of changing gender is illegal in Islam. It is haram in Islam. So we can see the effect of gender changing. So if the man changes gender to woman, so he must be wearing a woman attire. So we can use the previous section provisions, which was section 28 of Sharia Criminal Offences Federal Territories Act 1997. We can use it because it talks about a man posing as a woman. And then in the case of Christy Chan and Ketua Pengarah Jabatan Pendaftaran Negara 2013, so in this case we can conclude that in the context of Malaysian law, gender, sex, or gender refers to a person's biological status which includes physical features such as sex, chromosomes, sex hormones, internal reproductive structure, and it does not merely refer to external genitalia. So if you change your gender, if you change your alat sulit, external genitalia, it doesn't mean you change your gender, because the gender in Malaysia means also means the chromosomes and the hormones. So if you can never change your gender. If you was born as man, you are a man. You can never be a woman. If you was born a woman, you can never be a man. That is natural of our life. So from this presentation, we can conclude that LGBT is not and will never be recognized by any Malaysian law. And The problem here is Sharia Code Criminal Jurisdiction Act 1965. It limits the jurisdiction of Sharia courts in criminal, for example, in criminal matters. There's only imprisonment for a terms not exceeding 3 years, and a fine not exceeding 5,000 ringgit, and a whipping limited to only maximum of 6 times, 6 stroke only. So I would like to recommend that the so from this problem I would like to recommend that this law provision will be reviewed again. For example, the Minor Offences Act 1955 be reviewed and amended to adjust the fines imposed on if offenders based on current situations. So because the 1955 the old provision is not suitable for nowadays suitable because it is not suitable for nowadays situation because the last one is not relevant anymore. So another one, it is proposed that sexual offenses be free and unnatural, characterized and dressed in different genders. The offense of changing gender by LGBT people be made a specific criminal offense. In other words, in a simple word, I would like to suggest that we made a specific law for LGBT and not just Sharia jurisdiction or criminal or the penal code, because to prevent the LGBT fully from spread in our country, Malaysia, so we need a specific law to prevent the to to authorize our society from involved in LGBT. So that's all from my presentation, and that was my suggestion for this issue. And thank you for watching. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.